Welcome back to Trauma to Soul. You can find us on the web at traumatosoul.com and on social media at Trauma to Soul. We're heading into part 3 of Love Addiction with Mandy. We talk about idolizing, ignoring red flags, relationship patterns, projection, and deal breakers. It's a really good episode. If you haven't listened to the first 2, I suggest you go back and take a listen, because we are picking up right in the middle of the conversation where we left off in part 2. So sit back, grab a cup of coffee, and enjoy.
And it's funny that you say that, because I actually think there was a period where, especially in my relationships, I would almost idolize a person to the point where it made a lot of people uncomfortable. And they would say things to me like, don't make me out to be a hero. Don't make me out to be, I'm a person and I have flaws and it would always irritate me, because I'd be like, but I'm complimenting you, for fuck's sake. Like, I'm giving you, this is how I'm showing you love, you know? And I had to realize, whoa, actually, because I was overlooking all the flaws, I'm like, oh no, that's okay. You could do whatever you like. You can, it doesn't matter, because I'm just so grateful you're here. That is, to me, the most detrimental thing, because it doesn't foster good, open communication where you can actually sit with someone and say, you know what you did was really shit. Yeah. Made me feel really shit. Let's talk about it. It doesn't allow for that, because on the one hand, you're like, this person is so perfect. And on the other, you're like, oh, I'm seeing these things, these red flags, but I'm just going to collect them in my pocket and keep quiet about them.
Right. Until there's too many and they can't hold anymore. And then I'm going to explode on you.
Exactly. And it's just one giant red flag. And that's what happens. And a lot of the time when those relationships for me ended, many of them said to me, and I'm sorry, I have dated a lot, just putting it out there, but many of them said to me, like, you held me up so high that I never felt that I could fulfill that expectation. And that hit me so hard, because I was like, wow, what I'm putting onto someone else is perfection. This person is my soulmate. They can do no wrong. And that puts so much pressure on somebody else, because let's be honest, we're human. We're going to fuck up. We're going to make mistakes. Right. We're not going to get it right. 80% of the time we get it wrong.
Wow. So that's amazing. Like, so where do you think that comes from in you, with the compliments and,
I think it's probably stems from my dad, because he was an alcoholic and he was domestically violent, and I never felt an emotional connection to him. I don't doubt he loved me. There's a lot of forgiveness that has happened there on both, his side and my side. But I always thought the world of him. I always thought he could do no wrong, because he was doing so much wrong. And I didn't want to see it, because it was my dad,
Well, we do put that spin on our parents to survive.
We do, they're perfect. And that's the one thing I tell my daughter. I'm like, I'm not perfect, and I am human, and I'm going to make mistakes, and you're not going to agree with everything. And I need you to feel comfortable enough to call me out on it and say, why did you do that? It hurt me, or it made me upset, or whatever. And she does. She's very vocal, too vocal. But she feels safe enough with me to be that honest. And she will come to me and say, you did this and it made me feel really, really bad. And I never had that with my parents. Right. I wasn't allowed that space to say to them, what you've done here is wrong. And I don't agree with it, because every time I did, it was sort of brushed under the carpet, things happen and we don't talk about it and we don't confront it and we just keep quiet. And I think a lot of that generation is like that. Don't talk about the uncomfortable stuff, because it's bad.
So there was no validation. In fact, they invalidated your feelings by brushing it away. So in relationships, when, that perfect picture and that fantasy is a crack in it, there's no point in you having a conversation, because you already know the outcome.
Exactly. And also, I think, there's a double-edged sword when it comes to love addiction, because on the one hand, You can become quite desperate. You can become quite needy. You can be all of those things. But at the same time, you will subconsciously be choosing people that you know how it ends.
Right.
And you know where it's going. You're comfortable in the chaos. And you're like, okay, I'm just going to make. So I think there's this push and pull. You know, you're pulling because you want that love, but at the same time, you're actually pushing it away because you know this person isn't right for me. The situation isn't right for me. You know, like I remember somebody talking about deal breakers in Love Addicts Anonymous, and they were like, "What are your deal breakers?" And my first question was, "What the fuck is a deal breaker?"
I don't have
What do
any of
you
those.
mean? Yeah, what I don't understand. Like something that would end because, like in your mind, you're like, no, it'll never end. We're racing off into happily ever after. You know,
Right.
consciously, subconsciously, you know it's going to end in heartache. So for me, I had to sit down and actually write it down, and that's the one thing I love about the group is that you need to be clear. You need to sit down and actually have clarity of what you will accept and what you won't.
Right.
What are your deal breakers? You know, if somebody is constantly lying to you, if somebody is constantly dismissing your feelings, those are deal breakers. You know, you say, okay, there comes a certain point where I have expressed honesty is important to me. You're not meeting that need of mine, and I have to end the relationship because honesty for me personally is of paramount importance. Everything hinges on honesty. You have to be honest.
Right.
So it's about clarity. It's about sitting down, writing those things down. What will I accept? What won't I accept? I'm not saying be a Nazi and be like, oh, it has to be like this, or we can't be together. You know, judge the situation. Use your rationality. Like if somebody does my ass look fat in these jeans? No, not at all. Even though you've picked up like 20 kilos during quarantine. That's not the honesty I'm talking about. I'm
Yeah,
talking
we
about
really don't want to hear those questions because even if there's like a slight tone inflection that is not right, we're in
exactly.
so much freaking trouble.
You are raked through the coals. You know what I mean?
Yes.
Like but you have to know, you'll know. You know, I think a lot of people are quick to dismiss their intuition, which is so detrimental. You know, you have a feeling. There's something inside you. There's a voice that will say, this person lied to me about where they were. They lied to me about who they were with. You know, that sort of, I mean, I've had a lot of friends, both male and female, in relationships where they've actually said to me, no, but I can't tell him that. Or, you know, he'll say, no, I could never tell her that I was, you know, seeing one of my best friends who happens to be a girl.
Right.
And I'm like, okay, so when it comes out, because the truth always comes out, how are you going to handle that?
Yeah.
How are you going to say to your partner, I couldn't be honest with you about where I was because I don't believe we have enough trust? Those are the conversations you need to have.
Right. And never being allowed to have had them your entire life. We don't know how to have them.
Exactly.
We don't know how to have them openly, honestly, without reacting.
Yes.
Because we're going
into an uncomfortable emotion.
Right. Because we're just going to recall, because our body remembers, we're going to recall
exactly.
that feeling. And when I get that feeling of shame, or I get that feeling of being exposed before I'm ready to be exposed or vulnerable, and I just don't know how to handle that, because I'm only allowed to have certain emotions, and anger is not one of them. So I will turn that anger inward to self-hate. But then it gets to a point where I will self-hate a certain amount, and then I will shut down and then have to shut that person out. Like, these aren't healthy ways of doing it. And having those conversations, it's vulnerability. Like, I have to go in and I have to say, I'm feeling this way. Like, you brought up Brene Brown. She always says, the story I'm telling myself is.
Oh, yes.
Because I have a story of how I was disrespected, unloved, emotionally violated in some way, and all you said was pass the salt. And it's like I went ballistic inside.
Exactly.
But then you get to the point where it's like, do I have to talk about every time I feel triggered? I need to go work on this shit on my own. But how do you work on stuff when you're not in a relationship? How do you work on relationship issues when you're not in a relationship? It's kind of difficult. because
It is.
they don't come up. So you're constantly practicing. But definitely, it the more work and the more we can heal on our own, the more we can bring to the table. So if I can't have the conversation that I'm making myself uncomfortable because I don't like this about me, how can I
Yeah.
have that conversation with another human being?
Exactly, exactly. And that's why it's so important for people. I mean, I relationship hopped for years. I mean,
Right.
I think, I watched Elizabeth Gilbert's Eat, Pray, Love, and she was like, since I was 18, I either been seeing a guy or dating a guy. Like, I haven't had a moment to myself.
Right.
And I think that's where that is so important. Because if you're jumping from one relationship to another, you don't give yourself that time. You don't give yourself that space that you need to process. I mean, I know when I'm in an emotional state of processing, I withdraw. I don't speak to friends. I go home and I'm like, cool, I'm going to fucking feel my way through this.
Right.
Like, because you do, eventually you get to a point where your mind and your heart are like, all right, you've dwelled enough on this now. Like, it's time to put your big girl panties on and carry on, and you will get to that point, but you have to feel it to heal it.
Exactly. Because if you're just going to jump to the next relationship, because that's what we're going to do, right? Well, the
Yeah.
relationship, I'm addicted. This made me feel amazing. I got to go find the next one to make me feel amazing. Where no, we need to stop, feel what we're feeling, process what we went through. The problem is, it's like, it's like when you take a pill, you drink, you shoot up, whatever. When you get to that euphoric state and your mind is just soaked in chemicals and you are feeling great, see, the love thing doesn't wear off as quick as a drug. And when you're in it and your mind takes over and you are just running, you don't see the patterns, you don't see the mistakes, you don't see how you're acting until you hit that wall with somebody.
Yeah.
And then there's a break. And then all you do is you go into sadness. We don't really go into what was going on and the actions until it's over. So we do need that time to process. What did I learn about myself in this relationship? What could I have done better? Where was I out of control and not thinking straight?
Exactly.
And nobody really does that. People are just jumping from one person to another to fill that void that we should be filling ourselves. And it's so difficult because you don't learn it. You look at TV, you look at just everything in culture and society tells
Ugh.
you you are a fucking loser if you're not married with the 2.3 kids, the house, and the Mercedes. And it's like, well,
Exactly.
why does that make me a loser? Like, maybe I just need some time to go bike riding or go skiing or just do nothing. Why is it okay not
Exactly.
to be a part of something other than yourself? And dealing with the shame of that, and it was more of me looking at myself that way, where it's like
Yeah.
I took a huge long break, probably the biggest break from dating ever. And, you know, there's definitely drawbacks to it, without a doubt. But it got to the point where when you're weaning off an addiction, there's that craving every day, every
Mm.
minute, where you're just like tapping your wrist. You need a fix. You can't wait to get that fix. How long can I push this off until I cave?
Yeah.
It was the same thing when I stopped dating. It was that loneliness and the shame and, I'm a loser dialogue that I had to get rid of. And it got to the point where it was like, I'm really good right now. I don't want anybody showing up at all
Exactly.
whatsoever. And then, so one of two things happens. Either you get to the point where it's like, I feel strong enough right now where I can handle some loss,
Yes.
so I'll go out and date a little. Or you're just minding your own business and you get slapped in the face with somebody who just lights your ass up and you can't control it. And you hope that you're strong enough for the loss. So for me, I knew I couldn't handle losing my coffee cup in the house. Like, that was more than I could handle. So, dealing with the emotional dialogue that goes on when you're connecting with somebody and then worrying about that loss, I just knew I couldn't handle it. But when I felt like I was able to, I dipped my toe in again, and I'm like, yeah, it still sucks. Like, I feel like I'm better to being alone, but there's a part that really wants to be connected. And I think it's just finding somebody who's doing work on themselves, like the work you're doing. And if you can get to a place where you can actually slowly start talking about that middle ground that is so forbidden to talk about. You see, I don't want you to know, whoever you are, that I'm needy, right?
No,
Because
exactly.
I have taken my whole life and learned how not to be needy, because I got creamed for it anytime I got beat, I got hit, I got shamed, I was told I was selfish, I was punished, I was isolated. So for me, when I feel needy, I just hate myself so much
Yeah,
that if I tell you that I'm needy, you have this power and this weapon over me.
exactly.
But I have
Exactly.
to go into that vulnerability. I have to learn to be okay and make peace with my neediness so that I can tell another human being that I'm needy. And if they choose to use it against me, I'm strong enough not to let it cripple me. Okay, that's it for part 3. We'll be back next week with part 4 of love addiction. If you know anybody who would benefit from hearing about love addiction, please share it with them. And if you are enjoying the podcast yourself, please leave us a review on iTunes. You can find us on the web at traumatosoul.com and on social media at traumatosoul. Thanks so much. Have a great day.